So there we go. All right, mic should be back on, and we're moving forward here. All right. So what we have is last week we covered lock shimming, and again, this is all really new stuff. The live, the StreamYard, and just how everything actually works is still new to me. So I am still trying to figure out exactly how everything's working here and how to make it the best it can be for you. So last week we covered lock shimming and how to shim with spool pins or serrated pins. So the problem with the live stream, live share, and the way that I was doing it is StreamYard only broadcasts in 720p, which is not as good a quality as 1080p, which is considered high resolution or high quality. So we had to go back to recording the videos and then putting them up here. So I hope everybody understands that, and that's the reason why we're doing it. We get a better quality of product here, and you can see I can zoom in on this, and we can see, I mean, a ludicrous amount of detail doing it this way. So then we come back out, and we see what we've got here. So I'm going to start off with this plastic see-through lock and make sure that everybody can see what we can see here. All right. So here we've got the acrylic lock, and we start off by removing the clip on the back. Okay. Just like so. And then you can see how all of the pins and everything are all lined up in the lock cylinder. And then we can see the shear lines that we can come back to later. Okay. So you can see these right here. Just massive detail, way more detail than we're going to get in any other format. Now, I will tell you that I can't see comments until I stop doing screen share. Let's see, view tab. Oh, never mind. There we go. All right, got it. Perfect. Nope. File screen share here. All righty. Take your clip off. You can see that the lock is working, and you can see this is the shear line. And we've also added some nasty spool pins to this lock so we can actually see how the shim actually works. So we're going to be watching how to shim, and we're going to be doing just several random keys and locks that are in our little kit here to just show you the different styles of locks and how to make keys for them and how to rekey and service them. The biggest thing you'll notice is the big ramp on the key and a key blank. This is what is used during shimming so that the pin rides up and down the tip of the key blank here. Okay. This is our shim, thin piece of metal that literally slides and shims its way in between the top pin and the bottom pin, and you can see how it inserts in the back of the plug, just like so. And then you literally move the key in and out, up and down, until you see or feel the shim move. Now we've got it to move again, and again, and again. And these are all of the different little shear lines right here. This is your shear line, that piece, that little dark line right in between the two. Okay. Shim's coming in, meeting at that shear line. Look at how much more detail we can get on this as opposed to what we were doing in StreamYard before. Like, I can see the bend in the shim. You can see the shim's coming in, and as this pin gets driven down, the shim will slide in between the two pins, and it'll come all the way across. Okay. Now it's inside. We've got a couple more shimmed here. And voila, we have the last one turned. We have the last one shimmed, and now it's turned over. Sometimes the shim actually goes into that last pin stack, and sometimes you just hit the shear line, and because all the other ones are picked already, it just slides right out. Now, here's what some people were talking about before, where you can leave the shim in as you slide the follower in and push the plug out. Again, always pushing, never pulling. Always everything is push. You push the plug out, you push the follower back out. The shim can go along for the ride. It can't get stuck in there because it's longer than the cylinder is, so you can always pull it back out. Okay, here's another picture of that. And the shim will actually help save you from making a mistake if you create a gap in between the two. So leaving the shim in can actually help quite a bit. Now here, I intentionally caught my shim on one of those spool pins or serrated pins. I intentionally caught it on there. And I wanted to show you what it does to the shim. So this is exactly what it'll do. And then when your shim does this, now there's a blunt edge or a wrinkled edge in there, and it's not going to shim between the other pins very well. It literally wrecks the shim. This needs to go in the garbage. If it's your only shim, you can try and get a screwdriver and try and re-flatten the edge out of it. But really, you're just causing more wrinkles and you're stressing the shim out and you're causing more weak points in it. So not advised, okay? And then you can just see how much detail we have now as compared to before. Just wrecks that shim. Bad times for a shim. Spool pins make nasty, nasty work of the poor shim. There's what it looks like on the back side. And now that is not going to slide in between the two pins. Okay. So here it is all put together. Take the clip off. And hold on to it. That little trick, keeping your thumb behind the part itself, is actually going to really help out so that it doesn't fly off. Now here I'm showing that the key actually works. Then I'm showing you could use an SC1 key blank that is 5-pin, or you could use the SC4 that is 6-pin. Either one will work in this particular lock. Now, if you have a 6-pin lock, a 5-pin key blank will not work. And you can actually see how we're loading the shim up. Now the shim's going to go into the back side of the lock. Once the shim goes into the back side of the lock, you then now see I'm showing up a close-up on that shear line in between the two. Very important. Then you can see the pin stack move up and down, and you can see the shim move in between the pin stack. Once you move through the pin stack, you can see how it goes through each one of those chambers and goes through each one of those pin stacks until Now we're getting to the serrated pins, okay? So what I'm showing here is the secret for shimming serrated pins is to never engage the serrated pin. You need to only shim on the downstroke, and I'm going to have many more examples of that for you today. But the whole point is that you shim only on the bottom pin on the downstroke. As soon as the top pin is now in the equation and you start shimming up as the pin's driving up, it's all game over. It's not going to be a fun deal. It's no good. Okay, you're going to catch that shim and you're going to wreck it and make it look like I did. Then I'm showing how that shim can save you so that it doesn't, okay, so it doesn't actually, if you leave the shim in, it helps out. Now I intentionally caught that on the spool pin. I intentionally did that just to show you what it looks like because it's not pretty. Okay, it doesn't make your day any easier. Then after it does this, you're done. It's not going to want to shim any more of the pins. It's too blunt. Have I had to make one of these work? Yes, I have. I've had to just use the edge that wasn't wrinkled up to try and work on that. Now here's a picture of a shim with too much pressure, okay? Obviously, if it looks like this, you're applying too much pressure, and this is not what you want for shimming. This is another example of using a cutaway cylinder so that we can understand how the shim works and what it's actually doing. And we can actually see the shear lines here, 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 and here, okay? So here's what it looks like in this direction, way too much, okay? And then again, look at this, way higher quality. Now we can actually get in there. Look at that beautiful shear line right there. And these springs are doing all kinds of weird, funky stuff. This one's very, very condensed. These are not quite as condensed, but you can really get an idea of what's happening inside that lock with this picture right here. Maybe our video wants to play. Okay. So here's what it looks like with our key turned over. Beautiful. And this is what it would look like when the shim actually goes through. Okay. Notice the shim did not go through on the last one. You see the shim, 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 shim. No shim in this chamber. So what happened is as we were pulling the key out, it actually, the angle of the key hit the shear line, and it hit that shear line, and I had a little bit of pressure on it, so it went and turned over all on its own. Okay. Here we have another cylinder, same thing. This is a key and knob cylinder. And so what I wanted to do today is actually explain a lot of the differences between the cylinders. Everything we've been working on so far was either a training lock, a cutaway lock, an acrylic lock, or a key in knob cylinder. And key in knob, also known as KIK. So if you see kick or KIK anywhere, this is what they're referring to, a key in knob cylinder. Or now that levers are more ADA compliant, and they're what people want to see, they're what the fire department and ADA want to see, it would be a key in lever lock. It would be a proper term as well. They've just been known as key and knob forever and ever, so that terminology is not technically wrong. We just see less levers nowadays. Usually the tailpiece will determine whether it's a key and knob or key and lever. It'll be perfectly perpendicular with the Bible or the housing of the lock for lever locks, I believe, and then it would be cross or adjacent to the lock housing when it's a knob lock. Here we go. We got this one picked. Shim sprung all the way in. Beautiful. You can see what everything looks like. and you can understand what this shim is actually doing inside there. Okay. And this is what the pins look like when the key on a key blank. So I can actually sight read this lock. We'd have like 1 1 6 4 4 7. Would be a pretty decent guess. That's what I'd start with. Okay, so we could either cut a key to it and make a key to the lock, or, rekey the lock and give it a new key. All right, so here's a lot of the other locks that we were able to work with as well. This is our training lock, and then we've got a Euro profile cylinder. We've got a mortise lock, mortise cylinder. We've got a Schlage electronic cylinder lock, and a couple other things too. So let's go over what we have here. So this would be rekeying a lever lock from start to finish. Okay. And again, if you're reading comments, as soon as we get out of screen share mode, I'll be happy to answer them. I just cannot see what it's saying right now with this screen share mode in place. Okay. So the first thing we do is we come up to a key and lever lock. And do we have a working key? If we have a working key, we're in business. If we don't have a working key, you're going to either have to pick the lock or you're going to have to use the HPC lever force tool, which forces the detent in and pulls the lever off. Okay. Have to have a working key, or you have to pick the lock. Okay. Now I'm going to rotate the key in 90 degrees. And then when the key is rotated perpendicular like so, you could see before it was sitting flat and flush with the handle. Now it's rotated 90 degrees, and this will allow the detent to be pushed in. The catch, lever catch, detent, whatever you want to call it. I personally have come to the conclusion that the definition of detent matches the definition and the purpose of this as is. So that's what I'm going to refer to it as. Here we see the screwdriver, little teeny tiny screwdriver going into the detent as the key is rotated in the 90-degree position, and now we can pull the lever off. So key has to be in the rotated position, meaning we have a working key. The reason that you need that is if we could open this lock and we could pull this whole handle off without having an active working key, someone who didn't have a key could come up, take the lever off, and open the lock or open the door by doing this. You don't want to have that happen. That is why you need the key in most cases to actually be able to service the lock. Okay, and here we go. So now you can see what it looks like. Okay, keys rotated. This is the detent portion right here. This is what we poked in. That's the detent hole or retaining clip hole. Okay, right there. So we push in on this, it releases, and the whole handle and the lock cylinder and everything all come right off. Here it is. I'm pointing to it a little bit closer right here. Spring-driven piece in that location. Another better view of it. Even better view of it right here. This is what it looks like. That just catches inside that lever and allows you to release the cylinder. Now the cylinder is out. Notice the tailpiece is in the vertical position along with the housing or the Bible of the lock. Keep note of that and remember that because you want to put it back together the exact same way. Now I'm making sure and verifying that our pins are going to be different with the new key. They are. And we're determining that we're going to leave the 6th chamber empty. We're also going to check the lock housing to make sure that the 6th chamber is empty in there as well. Very important step. See what I'm doing? I'm checking empty, 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 empty. If there's a pin in here or there's a pin in here, everyone's going to have a problem. Okay? Because it's going to drive a pin down in there, or it won't be spring driven, and then you're going to really have a problem. Same thing, just a little closer view. and then put it all back together again, showing the tailpiece going in line with the housing for the lever configuration. Then we put the cylinder back inside the lever and get ready to attach it back to the door. Okay. Sometimes you'll have to help it. If it doesn't want to go back on, you'll actually need to put the key in the rotated position, 90 degree, and then push on the detent to help it go over. A screwdriver to help kind of smack it in place does go a long way. Now it's clicked back into place, and I can see that it's fully seated as the detent is now visible in the detent hole or the release hole. Now I'm seeing to move it, see if it actually moves the chassis. I have to make sure that the key actually works the cylinder and turns, and I have to make sure that the drive cam is actually going into the chassis of the lock and retracting the latch retraction portion of the chassis right here. Very valuable information. Okay. Now I'm testing it, making sure that everything works. Everything is working great. Okay. Beautiful. Key lined back up in the correct position. And now we have a successful rekey of this lock. Alrighty, so we have quite an assortment of locks here, and these are going to be the basic locks that you're going to see, or some of the most common ones that you're going to see, I believe. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do our key and lever rekey here. The first thing you're see if we can get that a little better. Going to need is a current working key. Okay, the teeth or the cuts are going to go towards the lever in most cases, just like so. And in this case, we'll be able to rotate the key 90 degrees so that it's perpendicular, as you see here. Okay, you can see that it's in that. Can see that it's in that position, and then we're going to poke our little pokey deal right in here and push. Now, if you don't have keys, you would have to pick this lock in order to get it open. Okay, so we'll push there, push in that detent just a little more, and everything should release for us here. It's a lot easier to do it on the door. There it goes. Okay. So this is what we're poking when we're poking around in there. Okay, is our little detent right there. It's springy, goes back and forth. And we can kind of see how that works. See how it's got a little spring on it? And it just goes in and out right there. Okay? Just like so. The reason. So that is what our key and lever is going to look like. And then our key. The reason why you can only turn it in the turn position is because that plug from that detent actually goes in and it connects with the tailpiece of the lock. Okay, so when it's flat, it can't go very far, and it doesn't go in far enough to release the lever. When it's turned in this position, all of a sudden it gets the extra little bit of room that it needs, and it can push in fully so that you can release it. This is why you can't release the handle unless you have a key or you pick the lock. It's for security. Key and lever here, the tailpiece, notice the tailpiece is going to go in line with the Bible of the lock or the housing of the lock. Okay, I just want to show that because we've got some that are shaped like this. This would be more of a knob, so it would go into a knob like so. So I'm going to put this back together. So that's how you get access to the cylinder, okay? And I guess we can actually rekey this one or take it apart at least so you can see what we've got going on here. So we're going to take this, take the lever out, take that piece out, take the lock apart. I'm going to make sure my pinning area is free of debris. The reason you want to make sure it's free of all other pins and springs is because if anything flies out of this lock, I want to make sure that I understand where that piece went. It's going to be very complex and very important to me. So same thing as we did before. Go ahead and push your detent in, spring, key, rotate, follower, Notice the backside has a hole in it, so don't let that hole line up with the Bible itself. This is all just fairly automatic for me. And then we'll have all of our pins, just like so. And then you can rekey this to whatever you want. That's what all the little boxes are for. So you can just keep everything individualized, and you can use the X and Y axis as a grid. So you can put everything, you can lay it out exactly the way it needs to go back together. Okay, last one goes right there. So then you'd put your new key in if we were doing that. I'm just going to rekey this the same that it was because it's easy for me. You can use your fingers, or you can use your pinning tweezers, whatever works for you. Oop. See, it's just easier for me to use fingers most of the time. Voila. Just like we did before. Okay, now I'm going to notice and take note that that 6th chamber does not have anything in it. And then I'm going to check and verify that the 6th chamber does not have anything in it here. Okay, so I'm looking to see if there's a pin or a spring inside this chamber right there. There is not. I showed you guys how to change or solve that last time. So again, make sure that this hole is not lined up like that. If it's lined up like that, you're going to have a really big problem really quickly. Okay, so let's see where we're at. There we go. Okay, do not want to have it like that. I want to have it about like that. Perfect. Snap. Put that back on. Great. Spring, detent, or push pin, cylinder cap ring pin, or retaining pin. Bunch of different names for you guys to know what that is. Okay. And we'll put everything back together. And I did not put everything back together correctly. This is a very common mistake, and you'll actually see why here in just a second. So I just showed you that goes, or no, actually I am correct. It goes the other way for key and knob lock. So we do have it correct. It goes with the Bible of the cylinder, just like so. So tighten down, back off 1 turn. This is in line with that Bible of that cylinder. Now we can take the key, put it back in, put it into its housing. I like to insert the key at this point because then I can kind of control the cylinder. And put it back on the lock. Should be able to, you can usually see the detent. I will then turn the key 90 degrees, and I will then push and help assist the detent go in which case we should be coming back on here. Sometimes you'll need to put the cylinder in place first, and then the only problem with that is you can't turn the cylinder. Nope, that's not letting us have it. Okay, let's try that one more time. So I'm going to put this in here, put the key in. I am feeling that we are getting some resistance. So let's see. It's a lot easier to actually do this on a door, believe it or not. There it is. Okay, click, and then the key should release if you did everything correctly. And you can see that we're actually actuating the... If the key does not release, there's a good chance that you have the tailpiece out of time, and you'll need to turn it to the other location. Piece right here. That's all very, very important. And everything comes back to line up just like so. So there's key and lever cylinder. That would be just like the cutaway that we did before. Okay, so if we did the cutaway and you understand that, that's great. Sweet. Now we got key and knob, the Schlage, good old Schlage key and knob cylinder. You're going to run into these all over the place. They have this egg-shaped or oval-shaped kind of tailpiece. I despise these locks. I hate them with a passion. They are miserable to rekey. They're miserable to work on. And if something blows up, you can't interchange them with other cylinders very easily or at all, really. So these things cause people a lot of heartache. So the first thing you're going to need is an L-shaped tool or an O-ring puller to be able to push and fish up inside the cap of the lock, compress the top spring down, and then push the lock cylinder out of the back of the lock without exploding it. Now that sounds easy, but it's a whole lot harder than it actually sounds. Here I'm actually using a tension wrench that I flipped up inside there to help compress that top spring cap. And you can see it's fully compressed now as it needs to come out of the housing. Now, there's not a lot that holds this. The only thing that holds it together is that cap has some claws on it that grab the Bible of the lock and allow it to float. This is called a floating spring cap. I repeat, floating spring cap. And they are a nightmare to deal with. Okay? In my opinion, anyways. So here's what it looks like. And you can see as we start coming back out, how that cap can float and move. And then the little claws actually grab into these little grooves right here. And that's what it looks like when it's starting to come out and it's almost out. So you can see what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing inside the lock is I'm putting something in thin alongside of it that has a little L shape to it so it can come up, grab the cap, pull it down, and then slide the cylinder out. I use my pointer finger to push the cylinder out of the housing and make sure that this cap does not get peeled off. If that gets peeled off and you explode springs and pins into that lock, you're going to have a very, very miserable day. Once we get it out, all you got to do is pull the little C-clip off, same way as we did the acrylic cylinder. Either use a screwdriver or two or a screwdriver in your finger. Clip comes right off. Don't lose it. They're a pain to find if they go flying off. And I already know that this cylinder is going to have spool pins or T-pins or security pins of some kind in there. So I'm only going to shim on the downstroke. This is the difference. So this is what I'm talking about. So when that shim's running into this is a standard pin. It can slide up and down the smooth surface all day long and not be a problem or cause a problem. This one is a serrated or spool pin. The reason we call them spool pins is because it looks like a spool of thread. Thicker at the top, thinner in the middle, thicker at the bottom. Spool pin, serrated pin, security pin, anti-bump pin, bump blocker, bump proof, all of that fun stuff is what they refer to when they're referring to this style of pin here. Oh, I can see comments on my phone. Great. So I'm going to go through comments now real quick as we go through this. Let's see here. All right. Now we got sound, cut via center, if loose, E-clip replace. So yeah, if the C-clip, so it's not actually an E-clip. An E-clip has the E in the center. A C-clip is the C shape. An E-clip has the portion in the center of it. You can replace them, or I just rebend them and put them back on, make sure they grip really nice. Don't lose plastic retainer. Yep, don't want to lose that. Be sure to put back the tailpiece in the horizontal or vertical position. Plastic holding cylinder. I know I'm missing. I don't know if it was missing on that one or not. I didn't see it come out. So therefore, that's one of those things you're going to deal with in the field. Yes, there usually is a little piece of plastic and a lever that holds that cylinder in place. I didn't see it on this one, but it is what it is. Love your Lock Boss pinning mat from CLK Supply. Yep, Lock Boss is awesome. I like my Lockjaw one. I think it's cool too. Everybody has their favorite pinning mat. Use pick to press cover spring and get out. Yes, you can use a pick, or you can use an O-ring puller, or you can use a tension wrench. Better to do this on the door. Yep, exactly. Way easier to do on the door. All right, we're caught up with questions. Now this cylinder is in the picked position. Okay, notice the egg shape or oval shape has to go up towards the top. This is an excellent, excellent way to start showing that you can leave the shim and the advantages of leaving the shim in place. Notice how I don't have it perfectly centered up here. So that means a pin could actually technically kind of fall in between here and the follower. Okay, very important to know. So now I'm going to leave the shim in place. I'm going to shove the plug out with the follower, and the shim will help protect everything along the way. It'll also help the pins from dropping down even into any of the creases. Even though it can't get stuck here, it can still add resistance. Okay, so this is changing the key. Obviously, it's different. I've got a much higher pin or a deeper cut here, shallower cut, and deeper cut. All of the pins are different. Pretty close when I sight read that one before. That's what it was, 27464. There's what it looks like with the new pins in it. All nice and shiny. Nothing sticking up. Here's a good test. This is the sight read test from the side. Okay. If I see anything sticking up over the shear line, we've got a problem. We need to fix that problem immediately. There it is again. And we're showing the different shape of the follower versus the shape of the plug. Put it back together with the C-clip in place. And here's what the key looks like set next to it. Compress the spring. Notice, see how I'm compressing the spring. Compress the spring to put back in the housing. And shove it back in the housing. Make sure I'm looking for this hollow point up here so I can see exactly where I'm at. There's a hollow point cut out in the knob. You need to identify that before you shove the lock cylinder into place. Now, I'm using a technique where I've got my finger inserted in the hole and I've got my finger pushing the cylinder in. You want to do this. You want to be able to move that together so that you can catch the front end. Otherwise, the cylinder could dive off and then it could literally get lost and sideways inside the housing of this knob. And I have spent 30 minutes plus, maybe even an hour once, trying to root and dig one of those things out of there. Very, very miserable process when that happens. So that way, if I keep the fingers together, I guide it and push it through all the way and don't let them get stuck. Then I immediately put the key in. Why do I want to do that? So I have a handle. Now I have a handle. Okay, so now we're going to do this knob cylinder. Okay, key is going to be, these are always a royal pain in the butt. I freaking despise dealing with these. This was one of the most irritating designs I think I've ever seen. There's a spring that goes up in here, and I've got to capture that spring with this tool and collapse it. See that? Okay, so I've got this tool, and what I'm doing is I'm basically pushing this cap down, and it'll make more sense when it comes all the way out here. Okay, so we've got that spring. So what I'm doing is I'm basically reaching up in there, and I'm pulling this thing down like that, because the spring is caught up in this little spot up in here, and it won't allow it to come out. Now, this little cylinder has given more people and more locksmiths more trouble than almost any other cylinder on the planet, except for the Quickset Smart Key, in my opinion. So the first thing that we're going to do is, much like our other lock, we're going to start off with a clip. Okay, and these residential locks are infested everywhere. These things are all over the place. You will run into them. Not a matter of if, a matter of when. Okay, so we take that back clip off, just like so. I like to put my parts in order as I take them off. Then we're going to need to shim this little fella. So I need a key blank, and I know it's going to be chocked full of spool and mushroom pins, so I'm going to have to be extremely careful of that. And that shim's already, this is what happens to a shim when you try and shim spool pins, you get that little notch in there. That's really bad. That's not going to help us out at all. Okay, so I'm going to try and shove this thing in there. And try and straighten it out just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my key is all the way inserted. Okay, all the way inserted, because we can only shim on the downstroke. If you remember, we need that shear line to shim only on the downstroke, because we have spool pins or pins that look like this. Let me show you the difference. Okay, we have pins that look like this up in there. And when you have a pin that looks like that, the shim gets caught on that little ridge, if you will. So where's my shim at? The shim will get caught on that little edge, and it will get caught up and hung up, and it will bend your shim. That's not what we want to have happen. So we can only shim on the downstroke. Okay. If you don't catch it, oh, there it goes. It went once. Did not get that second one, so I'm going to have to do my reset where I come back just the tiniest amount, reinsert the key, and then adjust. So what I'm doing is I showed you what it looked like with the acrylic cylinder, the clear cylinder, and the cutaway cylinder. Now we're applying the knowledge that we have and taking away the ability to see it and using feel to feel what we feel inside the lock. So as I'm pushing, I'm putting pressure on that shim, and then I'm feeling it and wiggling the key as it comes out. If it does not shim and I do not feel the shim advance or move forward, when I know that I've moved past that entire chamber, then I need to reset. I need to pull the key out. I need to pull the shim back just a tiny bit, just a tiny millimeter. So it's literally just not touching the top pin, and then put the key blank all the way back in so that the pin is all the way at the top, and then let it come back down again. Okay. Try and catch it on the second try. My pressure. You will have to repeat this process over and over and over until you get it shimmed, until you move past it. And I can tell you, like picking a lock, pressure is key. Too much pressure on the shim, and you're going to wrinkle the shim. You're going to stress the shim out, and you're going to put too much pressure on the pin. The spring can't drive the pin past the pressure that you're using. Too little pressure, and you're not going to have enough energy or enough pressure to separate the two. So shim picking is very, very difficult on some locks. It's easy on some, difficult on others. And adjust my technique. There it goes. Okay, so we got two. Okay. Too much pressure, and you hold the pin in the pin stack. 1, 2, that might have been even 3. Too much pressure, and you hold the pin in the pin stack, and you don't allow the spring to do its job. Too little pressure, and you can't overcome it. So there we have it. It is now in the picked position. And we can now take this out. Now, especially with this lock, because of this egg-shaped tailpiece here, I highly, highly recommend you just leave the shim right in place. Okay, that's going to prevent the top pins from coming down into the bottom pins. So we can go just like this, and I'll show you how to do it without the shim when we come back. But it's basically turning it over to that 90-degree period. And then here, now we can actually rekey this to something we actually have keys to. You can only rekey it to a 5-pin key. So keep that in mind as well. So I'm going to just take this. We're going to make sure that it's different. Okay, plenty different. And I'm going to open up my pin kit. And I'm going to dump all these. Are any of these the same? No, nothing is the same. Everything needs to come out of there. Going into that, and then we're going to take a look right here, and we're going to see what it says, 27464. So 2 7 4 Notice I've got another 4, so I'm going to just put that one in, and a 6. Okay, all rekeyed very nicely, ready to go. Now, if we don't have our protective shim in there, which I highly recommend you leave in there, you're going to have to make 1000% sure you can see how that egg shape is differently shaped from the actual follower itself. So if we don't have the high side of the oval, I repeat, the high side of the oval going into up against the top pin stack, you will drop pins. Okay, so there we have it. Just like that, everything works good. Reinsert our clip. Just like so. And now that cylinder has been totally and completely rekeyed and is now ready to rock and roll. Big, huge tip for this, push down like so on the spring cap. Look inside and find out where the gap is, so you can see that little gap right up in there. Okay, I'm going to push in, and I'm going to push him all the way in, and I'm going to catch him with my other finger. Okay, this is very important. Otherwise, it'll tend to tip and drop down in if you don't do this little trick. And then you'll be fishing that cylinder around for the rest of the day. And then quickly also insert the key so that it can no longer fall back out of its housing. Okay, this is all extremely important. I've had to chase one of these cylinders around for hours before. Okay, once it gets wedged in there and jammed in there, it's a bad, bad, bad time. So this will be done. You'd go to your lock, you'd go to insert it, turn it 90 degrees, push the detent in, click this knob into place, and now you are done and ready to go. Okay, so now we're going to do this knob cylinder. So we're coming up on about an hour now. It's about 47 minutes. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Come back to StreamYard here. I'm going to end the screen share. And if there's any questions that anybody has, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Just put them in the chat section over there. We've got a couple people here writing some questions. We should have taken care of most of them. Stanley says, I ran into an old knob that had the spring Bible. It was a KW1 QA. Yeah, there's some weird stuff out there. And that's what I try and do. Whenever I get a hold of something that I haven't seen before or something really weird, I try and make sure that I document that so that when somebody else sees it, they have a resource to go ahead and view and use so that they can understand how that system works. I do the work so that hopefully you don't have to beat your head against the wall like I did to get it figured out to begin with. That's the whole point of these meetings. And I know we're starting out with some really basic stuff, but you know what? My philosophy was, let's go back to the basics. Let's do the basics now because cylinders have changed. There's a lot of new things out there. And people need to know how to apply the old rules with the new technology that's out there. And that's just where we need to start. We need to go back to the beginning and understand the beginning so that we can help more people join this trade and join this industry. And tradesmen are just there's not a lot of people and not a lot of kids going into trade schools anymore and not wanting to learn real hands-on work. Everybody wants to sit in an office and play on a phone or play on a computer. And more power to them if that's what they want to do. I personally would go insane. I can't sit and just not do anything or do very minimalistic work on the couch or on the chair. So I don't understand it. But I know if we get this message out there, if I start building and laying these bricks now, we'll have a very rock solid foundation so that people can come back to this and they can get in at the beginning, they can get in on the forefront, and we can really start helping the industry and helping people understand how this trade works and where the resources for information are. And I'm making it free and affordable for people so that they can at least get started. Now, once they get started, they can start doing some basic work, and then they can afford the advanced training, like the Wayne's Lock Shop website. If you guys have not checked out Wayne's Lock Shop, please go there. Please apply. You get a 7-day free trial. It's all of my best top work. All of these meetings go there. There's like 1,000 other videos there from everything from safe opening, safe moving, general rekey work, quick set smart key, how to defeat that lock 15 different ways, how to drill it, bypass it, decode it, use a leashy tool on it, just every possible concept possible to defeat that lock we have in there. Mounting exit devices, electronic access, mag locks, electronic strikes, storefront servicing, everything is in there. Door closers, door operators, all that stuff is in there. Everything except for automotive. I do not do any automotive, so you will not find automotive work in there. You'll see how to open some cars, but you're not going to see how to generate keys. Just being transparent with what we have to offer. I specialize in safe opening, safe moving, commercial hardware, electronic access, and residential work. There's a lot of stuff in there on multi-point hardware, Mortise body locks, Baldwin locks, M-Tech locks, Rocky Mountain hardware, Sun Valley bronze, all the weird stuff that people just don't see. Hoppy, GU, Winkhaus from Germany, just some really weird stuff. So check it out, wayneslockshop.com. See if I can put it in the chat section over here. And if you want to join, check it out. I guarantee there will be something in there that you probably haven't seen. Put this in here. And there's the tag for that. So with that, we'll see you next week. We're giving you about an hour of content here. I hope everybody has a great day. I appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. Check out wayneslockshop.com and have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week, every Monday, 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Next week, we're going to have 2 meetings. Locksmith Live, this one at 4, and Locksmiths United at 5. Thanks for watching. See you next week.